I go to a lot of film festivals in different countries, and often they're quite pretentious. And people are there because, well, for good reason. They're trying to sell and promote their films. But there's always a sense of people looking over their shoulder to see who's more important in the room. And this festival is like the opposite of that. There's a kind of, well, there's a pleasure, there's a warmth. It's very unpretentious. And you're taken care of incredibly well by the festival. And you make friends. For me, I much prefer small festivals than these huge festivals where you get lost in them. I think that's a danger. And through coming here, I've met great people and learnt about a culture I didn't know very much about at all. So it's a place that is a priority for me to come back to. I think you're very special. Perhaps you don't see yourselves like that, but there's a kind of uniqueness. And it's not, I don't want to sound patronizing, but there's within this modesty, not having the same funding as somewhere like New York or Toronto or whatever, there's other qualities that make it, to me, much more valuable. So for me, it's perfect. Coming here is perfect. Where else in the world would choose to put all my films together and then make an exhibition about each film? I mean, no one's done that, but you've done it. And so it's like coming into a place and seeing, I'm going to get emotional, part of my life. That doesn't happen, because what you've done is you've put different elements, different aspects of my films. There is a combination of found material, eclectic material like the newspapers, the posters from Che, the artifacts, the objects on the wall in the studios of Witkin, etc. So you've got these layers, you have these encounters which are outside the actual photographs by the artists. Then you have the actual works by the artists, and even the paintings, but as photographs, because we don't have the actual paintings. So you have this montage, if you like, that gives, I think, the audience a taste of the films. And having the screens in each room showing the trailers reinforces that, because what is a trailer other than a little bit of a movie that is to seduce you to see the actual movie. So the exhibition in each room becomes an extension of that. It's like an exhibition trailer in a way. And that's fascinating. No one's ever done that before that I'm aware of. Also, you know, I walk through it and I see how similar my interests are. They repeat themselves. I am interested in ephemera. I'm interested in high art and low art. I'm interested in the art photograph, the documentary photograph, the popular image, the snapshot. So you have all these layers of photography also that are reflected in the films, but reflected in the walls. So for me, that's really interesting to see it. And then how you've mounted it, for me, is also very interesting. What you chose to put in frames, what you pasted to the walls, what becomes poster, what becomes art, how you treat each thing. I think it really works, because what you've done in an abstract way is make an exhibition which is reflective of how the films work, because the films work in layers. They're layers. Each film has these multiple layers, and then the questions that we put in each room really reflect nothing to do with the work necessarily on the walls, but with the conundrum of what I was trying to look at in each film, the essence, if you like, of the discourse going on in the films. So the questions to me matter a lot. So I think it looks simple, it looks fairly modest, but it's not. It's actually very complex. I'm very happy. I think curators are storytellers. We're researchers, we're storytellers, and we tell our story in complex ways, in a different way to a film. In a film, you tell your story in a linear way. You have your audience, you hope, sitting down, and they stay. So there is a beginning, a middle, and an end, and they passively watch your narrative. That's what they do when they go to the cinema. In an exhibition, it's much more architectural. You're in a space. How you use the walls is critical. How you move around a room, how you have to take into account the anarchy of your audience, because your audience don't go into a room and start at the beginning and walk round and clockwise or anti-clockwise and read everything. So what you have to take into account are all these layers of looking, how people look, whether they read or not, whether they just graze, and so that everybody on all these different levels leaves with a sense of something. But it's also narrative, it's also storytelling, it's also gathering together information and presenting it to your audience so they leave with an essence of your idea. That's identical to cinema. As what I said the other day, we're storytellers. That's essentially what we do. We do it in different media. I'm fascinated by portraiture, because a portrait is an exchange. A portrait is about trust. A portrait is a gift. It's the person who's being photographed is giving you the gift of their presence, their image, the exchange. And I think for me, my two favorite photographers are August Sander and Irving Penn in relation to that. Sander much more than Penn. I think the work is about dignity. It's the antithesis of Metanides. Metanides, in essence, is a thief. Metanides is extraordinary in his cinematic imagery for a man who left school at the age of 9, who'd photographed the first time in a morgue at the age of 11. But he went to the movies. He watched film noir, and his eye comes from cinema, completely. And you look around the room, it's dramatic, it's cinematic, it's phenomenal, his work. But as a portrait, the portraits that he took when the people in those portraits, for me, couldn't say no, couldn't say, don't take my portrait, because they were either traumatized or they were dead. So for him, his motivation was the taking of the image, of getting the story, whereas the portrait in this classical way is about an exchange. It's about a democracy. It's about choice. So for me, those values are very important to how I see myself as a filmmaker. So in the last 2 films I've made, including Metanides actually, I used a backdrop. I took the idea of Irving Penn further, and I would travel with my backdrop and put my characters in front of the backdrop to give them a value, to give what they said a sense of that dignity, their importance, how important their narrative was to me. So in a way, I take them forward with me into future films, but also the snapshot, popular photography, Facebook images. I mean, we live in the 21st century. So now I'm making a film with a family, and I understand that what I'm doing in a way is making for them a family video, a home movie. So I'm taking the aesthetic of the home movie through the family album, through Facebook, and taking that aesthetic into the film, into its modernity. No backdrop, no formality, handheld camera, very different, but they're working with me because we're creating the film together. And it's a family who I've been filming for 25 years, so there's that longevity and that history. And at the same time, I'm also making a film with a politician in Ireland with Gerry Adams, and it's about looking at this man's life and his dedication to creating a united Ireland. And so he talks a lot about the past. So how do I represent the past? It's finding footage. I'm doing, I should say, exactly the same as I've done historically with still images, but I'm researching and finding archive material, but news footage, home movies, and I'm making a compilation with them with Gerry's voice. So I'm doing the same things over and over again, but I'm just, I guess, reinventing to fit the content how I do that. But it's the same stuff, it's the same research. I mean, now I'm making the film about Adams. It's exactly what I did in Chevolution, which was my first film, scouring the internet, except the internet now is much better, but scouring the internet, looking for film footage, and also discovering that critical moments in the history of Ireland, you find in different places the same footage. Exactly the same as with Chevolution. The footage when Fidel came into Havana after getting rid of Batista, absolutely different. You know, there was one cameraman. We see that footage again and again and again in different qualities or whatever, but it's the same footage and the same, I'm having that same, if you like, wall in front of me in Ireland, finding pictures when the British Army are first occupied, the curfews, all these events, the hunger strike, all these things, you come up against the same archival footage, which becomes iconic in exactly the way the image of Che was iconic. So I find myself going back to the same way of thinking. So, you know, I mean, that's it. It's the same brain, it's the same person, it's just older. But you think in the same fragmented ways and whatever, and have the same obsessions. I'm obsessed. I want to finish these 2 films, and I want to grow orchids. I want to just take a year and re-find myself. You know, I think we get trapped in working production, and there has to be space to reflect. And I'm not very good at that. And I need to give myself the gift of reflection, space, and not feel insecure about that, feel that that's okay. It really is meaningful. I mean it sincerely. It's really meaningful to see the culmination of all my films on the walls of your gallery, because the wall is where I come from, and I moved into film. So to see my films on the wall is like going full circle. Yeah. So it's really special. Oops, sorry. It's really special for me.
Thank you very much.
No, thank you.